Well, hello friends. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm in here in our big rec room in my sewing corner getting ready to make myself a pair of leggings for wearing under my skirts. And I've had several people asking me how I make it. Well, super easy, and I'm getting ready to show you right now, and let's get to it. All right, so what I have laid out here is 100% cotton thermal knit that I get from Amazon, and this has been my favorite fabric so far for making my leggings out of. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. Now me, I usually just kind of wing it and cut them out. I used to make leggings all the time for dance and dance shows, you know, part of costumes and whatnot. And so I have a pretty good idea how this works. Now, one of the things I recommend is take one of your old pairs of leggings that you don't wear anymore, but you really liked the fit of. Maybe they're wore out, maybe they got holes in them, maybe the fabric's just getting too thin, whatever it is, and simply cut them apart from the top of the waist and then all the way around the leg, and then cut the leg opening down the inside. Not the outside leg, not on the outside. If there's like these ones, these are a pair of my old dance ones. They actually had a seam on the outside as well as the inside. Don't cut the outside seam, cut only the inside seam. And you can lay them out like this on top of the fabric, and then pin it in place, and then cut around it all the way around it, because what you're going to find, and the reason this looks really short on the top is I've already actually cut the waistband off of these and used them on some other things, use the fabric on something else. And that's what I'm going to do with the rest of this fabric, is use the stretch knit for actually waistbands on other things. So anyway, what you'll find is that when you do this, the reason why, if you want a really good fit, you might want to cut them out this way, because the side that goes in the back is going to come down a little bit farther and out more, the corner of it. There isn't a really huge difference in this particular pair, but you get over here and this is just shorter all the way around. So now if I fold it so that these corners match up, after you cut all this out, let's say the waistband is still in place, then you're going to find that when you match these two inside corners up, this back part is going to come up higher, and it's also going to come in farther. Now the way these ones were made, there isn't as much of a difference between the two sides, but you can still see there is a difference. This one comes in farther, where this one's more shallow. Now that isn't actually how I cut mine out anymore, because I like a nice, I don't care for a real perfect fit these days. I like my leggings to fit just a little bit loose. And so what I do is I cut the front and the back the same, and then after I get it cut out and sewn together, then I worry about cutting the front part just a little bit lower according to how I want it to fit and how high up I want the waist. So then what I do is I fold the fabric in half. And one of the things I forgot to say is when you lay your fabric out, so let's say you're using an old pair of leggings as a pattern. Make sure that you lay them out so that the stretchy, if it's only a two-way stretch in particular like this is going this way. Okay, it's going widthwise, not lengthwise. Double check that. This one's going to have a little bit of stretch this way, but it's got more stretch this way. So I want to make sure you have most of your stretch going horizontally rather than lengthwise. If you don't do that, you're going to be very angry with yourself when you go to put them on and realize they're not going to go on as easy as you would like. So what I do, and you can see this one I've already cut out, and because this is also this is also the same desk I use to cure my soaps and stuff. Sometimes I lay fabric on here and I get little pieces of soap on it. So if you see any white stuff, that's what it is. Anyway, these are actually the same. I cut the waist the top of it real long on purpose, because I usually try them on after I get them together and then decide how low down I want it before I do the waistband. So that's going to be entirely up to you and whatever pattern you choose to use. So what I like to do is then fold the fabric in half, or just fold it as narrow as I can, get as skinny as I can, so I'm making the most out of my fabric, because whatever's left over I'm probably going to use to make a top with. Whether it be an under top, or maybe if I have enough to make basically a t-shirt, I'm going to do that, because I'm starting to get back into making my own t-shirts and stuff. So I'm just going to cut it like this. So I'm just going to cut around this. I'm going to go ahead and cut this waist shorter, so that's why I've got it laid out like that. And so all sides are going to be the same. But when I'm wearing it, it's not going to matter. And I like just a little bit looser fit these days, because that's why I got back into making my own leggings, because the store-bought ones always have spandex or lycra in it, and I want just 100% cotton, and I want it to fit looser. My skin is just too sensitive for that kind of stuff these days. Now you can see I'm not even bothering to pin it. I recommend that you pin it in place, but this is gonna stay pretty good because of the type of fabric it is. It shouldn't go anywhere. And I'm gonna cut these off so that they're the same. Because the waistband I'm going to do separately. Okay, and then how long you make them is up to you. Now, I leave also this a little bit looser around the ankle as well. Not too loose. I want to be able to, if I want to tuck them into my socks, boots, or whatever, I want to keep that simple. But I just, again, like it just a little bit looser. Some people may want even looser than that. If you look at, let me pull this old pair out. These were, these were dance leggings. These were very tiny at the ankle because they were dance leggings. And they even had the elastic in the bottom, which I'm not going to do because I can't stand elastic these days at all. So I actually just leave mine like this. I'm not even going to hem them. But you may want to hem them. Since mine never show, these are just for wearing under my skirts. And typically, if I'm going out anywhere, the ends are going to be tucked into some boots. All right, so let's go over to the sewing machine, and then I'll show you what the next step is. Then you're going to take the legs, and you're going to match these corners up, which they already are right now. Now, if you're making the pair where the front is a little different than the back, don't line the top of it up. Only line the corners up. This is very important. These 2 points here where the crotch is, that's the part you want to line up. And now, because of the nature of this, I'm going to use a zigzag stitch. I don't have a serger, never have had one, and I don't really care. Zigzag stitch always does what I need it to do, but you may want to use a serger for this step. That's commonly, and store-bought stuff, that is commonly what's used. So just sew your edges together. I'm going to set this on a slightly narrower zigzag, and it doesn't have to be super tight. Okay, and so then make sure you get this. You're going to want to have the second leg done too, of course, but you're going to need to make sure that you turn them right side out after you stitch them together. So obviously this fabric goes either way. I mean, there's no one right way for this fabric to face, but if you've got some kind of printed fabric, whatever you're using, make sure that you have the wrong sides out when you're doing this step right here. And then one thing I almost forgot to say is at the beginning and at the end of your long stitch, be sure to lock your stitch down, especially when you're talking about pants, especially at the ankles and at the crotch. These are the 2 places that are going to be most likely to want to come apart on you. So again, I want to turn this right side out. Then, and another thing I need to specify is that when you cut that fabric out, especially if it's a one-sided fabric like some sort of print, you're going to want to make sure if you're using the more contoured shape where the front and the back are cut differently, that you flip it when you cut the second leg out, and that it's the opposite way. This is very important. Because the way I'm doing this, it doesn't matter which way, because both sides are going to be the same. And yes, what that's going to mean is it's going to fit just a little bit looser in the front, but the difference is so minimal that you don't really notice. I mostly just, what I do is once I get it together, I just cut the front part of the pants down a little bit lower. To me, that just makes it easy. So the very next thing you're going to do is you're going to match the inside seams up, and then you're going to want to pin your fronts and your backs together. And you'll know if you're not doing it like I'm doing here, you will know if you have it wrong, because these should match up. The two fronts should be together, and there shouldn't be off. And same thing with the backs. If you get it together and you have the front is, one side is much longer than the other side, then you've got them put together wrong. One of your legs was backwards or something, or you cut two legs out exactly the same. But since mine are already cut out exactly the same anyway, they should match up either way, and it's not going to be a big deal. So once you have that together, and I recommend pinning it at the crotch so that you have all these seams meeting up together, just to make sure it's straight. I don't need to do that. I just match it up there first, lock down my stitch. And you're going to sew all the way around, starting from one side, whether it be the front or the back, all the way down across the crotch, across the two seams here. So I'm right at the crotch right now. I like to double the stitches right in there, just because, again, that's a good point of wear, most likely to blow out there. And then all the way back up the other side. And then when you get to this point, what I suggest you do, you try them on and see how they feel, because depending on what fabric you use, even if you cut them exactly like that really well-fitting pair of leggings you used to wear, if you're using a fabric like this, the fit is going to be a little bit different no matter how close you got it to the original pattern. So try them on before you do anything else. And so you can see I've got them together right now. It's as simple as that. They're easy to try on. You'll also want to decide, okay, do I want to make the legs any tighter, or do I want it tighter at the ankle, or whatever? Do I want it tighter up here at the waist, or how high up do you want this to sit? Do you want these to be low riders? Do you want them to sit right at your waist? I used to like them to fit just below the waistband of my skirt. Anymore, I kind of like them to fit more right at my waist. I find it a little bit more comfortable there these days. So that's partly why I cut these higher. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go try these on and figure out how low I want the front, or if I want to cut any more off the top of this before I do the waistband. All right, so I know I don't want to cut these any lower in the back. I'm just going to trim about up to an inch lower at the center of these. What I'm going to do is start from the corner, and I'm going to slowly and carefully taper this down so it's about just an inch lower in the front, which will obviously mean I'm going to want to lock this stitch down again and sew over it once I cut it, because I'll be cutting through those stitches. And then I'll just do the same thing, coming back up and tapering it up to the other side. So the piece you cut off should look something like that. And if you want to be more precise, you can. I'm not, because of the way these fit, they're a little on the looser side for a legging, and and nobody needs to see these, because to me, these are my underwear. These are not meant to be pants. I wear these as just basically long underwear, like this fabric is made out of, just to keep my legs warm, and also modest for any time where I have to pick up my skirt when I'm getting into the rigs, or walking up steps, or climbing up ladders. And the great thing about this particular fabric, I'll link to this one below. I can only find this, the 100% cotton, in brown and gray, which is fine because they're a couple of my favorite colors. But the great thing about this is it's not a heavy thermal knit. It's a very lightweight thermal knit. So you can see actually light through it. And so not only is it warm in the winter, it's also keeps my legs cooler in the warmer months. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to take some, this is the only place I'm going to use anything lycra at all. Now, if you can't handle lycra at all, then I recommend taking another piece of the other fabric to make your waistband. But because it's important to me to have a waistband that is going to not keep stretching out and then, you know, just get too loose, this is the one place I will like to use a little bit of some kind of lycra in the waistband, and still being able to avoid using elastic, because I find this to make a much more comfortable waistband than elastic waistband. So getting it going, now this is a 4-way stretch pretty much, but you're even with a 4-way stretch, you're going to find one way is far more stretchy than the other. And that's the way I'm going to use, so that when I go to pull it on, this stretchier way is going to be at my waistband. So cutting out cotton lycra can be a little tricky because it always wants to curl up on you, and then trying to do this on camera. So basically get an idea how wide you want your waistband. You may want it really wide like that. I don't want it that wide. I just want it wide enough that it's going to sit on my waist and keep my pants from falling down. And so once you get the width figured out, cut yourself a strip, making sure you're cutting it at least twice as long as the pants are wide, so that you have enough to go around all the way around it. Okay, so when you go to make this waistband, you may have found that it didn't cut straight, because working with cotton lycra can be a real pain when it comes to that, and it's going to roll up. So what you want to do is make sure that you turn it the side so that the rolls go out away from each other rather than towards each other. That's going to make it easier for you to get this lined up straight. And I know mine's going to be really crooked because I was really sloppy in the way I cut it. And so what I do is then I'm just going to pin it together, and starting from the middle, by the way, start it from the middle of the thing and start pinning it together. Don't start from the end and then go down. Especially don't start from the end and just start sewing it together, because you're going to end up way off when you get to the end. Because just the nature of this fabric. I'm sure there's probably more professional, easier ways to do this. This is just me. Other than a little bit of sewing and home ec, I never had sewing classes. I just taught myself how to do what I do, and just figured things out by examining clothes and how they're put together, and then just always look for the easiest way to do it. And depending on what it is gonna, you know, and if it's something that you're wearing for show, you're gonna probably want to be a little more particular about how it looks. So as I thought, this is really kind of wonky. It's not off. One side is much wider than the other, but that is why I'm doing this, so I can take a look at it and see. Now I know that it's already going to be wider in waist than I need it. So what I want to do is when I go to sew it onto my pants, it's really only this one end here that's bad. The rest of this looks pretty good. So this will be the end I'm going to end up cutting off. So when I go to sew this onto the pants, I'm going to start with the nicer end first. Now let's double check on the width. It looks pretty good. Okay. Now, once you know where the back of the pants are, now this is if you're doing the waistband this way. The other option, I always forget to say stuff like this, is if you'd rather just use elastic in these in the top, then simply allow more at the top. Give yourself 2-3 more inches at the top of the pants all the way around, and then just fold it over and make a casing like you would see me do on my skirts. I got a couple of different skirt videos. Just fold it over, stitch it down, and leave an opening for you to thread some elastic through there. But that's not what I'm doing. This is actually the more complicated way. The elastic way would be much easier, or you could even do a drawstring if you wanted, depending on how you're wearing these. So I'm going to start at the back of the pants. Okay, so this is the seam at the very back of the pants. And I'm going to leave a little bit of extra hanging over. And I'm going to put that so the ends, the two ends of the waistband are at the top of the fabric of the pants. And I've got that in the back like this. Okay, now that I got that there, I can put that down and hold it in place. And I'm leaving these edges out farther than the pants, and I can always trim them later, because this is a pretty wide waistband as it is. I do that on purpose to give me plenty to work with. Okay, now this you're going to want to use, you're going to want a good wide zigzag on this. Or a serger, again, would come in handy. So I'm just putting down a stitch to help hold it in place. Now, as I go, I'm going to want to only lightly stretch this top layer and then stretch the waistband layers more than the top layer. I don't know if that makes any sense. So instead of stretching them as I sew evenly, I'm just pulling the bottom one farther and then just allowing a light amount of stretch, barely even pulling this top layer, because my idea is to make the waistband tighter than the pants themselves. And then I just start zigzagging around, keep pulling on the waistband layers. You see how I'm doing that? I pull that first, then I lightly pull this and lay it down, and then just start sewing. Making sure you're holding that so the stretch doesn't bounce back. You want to keep that stretch on there as you're sewing. Okay, and again, I pull this quite a ways while I pull this just lightly. Okay, now that I got to the end, you'll see I have a bunch of fabric left over on the waistband. That's to be expected. I do that on purpose because you are going to find that this should look, for the way I'm doing this, you should have a little bit of almost, once you release it, it should look a little bit gathered there. Now, if you want the waist to fit just the same fit as the rest of the pant, or if you're using this kind of fabric for your pants, because you can buy this same fabric and use it to make your pants from, and I got this from Amazon as well. I'll link to both of these. Then you just make the waistband pretty much the same. You're just doubling it over to give it a little bit more strength and durability at the waist, and you know, it is just a little bit more comfortable. I've tried the single layer and it doesn't really work too well. It just stretches out too much. So you want a double layer for the waistband. And then you'll probably want to keep it the same. But because I cut the leggings, you know, the pants part a little bit looser anyway, I do want the waistband, you know, and the way I'm shaped, kind of more hourglass, I need my waistband to definitely fit tighter than the rest of the pants. So anyway, what you may want to do is you may want to try this on before you sew this together, or before you cut this off and sew it together. Okay, I decided I better try them on just to be sure, and that's the fit that I want. Not too tight, but not too snug either. Just a nice, comfy fit. And then what I'm going to do, now that I feel good about that, is I'm going to go ahead and leave a little bit extra and just cut that off as straight as I can. And then I've got these inside out right now. This is the way I want them. I'm going to take that waistband and sew it together so that this seam and then the seam of the waistband is going to match up. And then I'm still going to want to trim the excess when I get done. Now, one thing you may find is you can even do an angle here to make it just a little bit tighter at the top and let it taper down. I do that quite a bit with mine. Again, a lot of this is going to depend on your shape. So I'm going to angle that just a little bit and then bring it down to match up with the seams down here. Making sure, especially up here, that I lock these stitches down. Okay, and you can see I still have a bunch of extra. And I'm just going to trim that off. Now, there's other ways you can do this. If you want to sew your waistband together first and then put it on your pants, that's another great way to do it. I always just like to do it this way and work with it as I go. Then you're going to want to double check and make sure that you don't have any gaps. So sometimes we, like where this met up over here when I was sewing, there might have been a gap, so then you're going to want to stitch that down. So there we have it. And then again, if you want, you can take the leg ends and you can just fold it over and hem it. Me, I just leave it. It's really comfortable just like this. And you know, I want it to stay really stretchy. You can just do a zigzag stitch and stretch it a little bit as you go. I suggest folding it over just once if you're wanting a more finished look, and then do that zigzag stitch around. And yeah, so that's how I do it for just wearing under my skirts. Nothing fancy. It's just simple and it's very, very comfortable. And these homemade ones are my favorite leggings ever to wear under my skirts. I used to always wear my old dance ones, but I got to where they just weren't comfortable anymore. I can't handle the lycra in them anymore. So this is 100% cotton, and you know, and I like the fact that I made it myself anyway. All right, so there you have it. There's just a real simple way you can throw yourself together a pair of leggings with just whatever you have on hand. No need to go buy a pattern if you already have some leggings that you like the fit of. And one of the things I wanted to say is, if you have a pair of leggings that you don't want to destroy but you like the fit of, you can simply, well, I shouldn't say simply, it'll take a lot longer to do it this way, but take a seam ripper and just carefully open up the seams, use it as a pattern, and then stitch it back together again when you're all done. That might be a little more scary, and especially if it's like a spandex or anything like that, you're going to want to be very careful with that seam ripper that you don't rip a hole in it as you're taking it apart. Those leggings there, I won't wear them anymore, so I just cut them along the seams and use that. So there's a couple options you can use for a pattern. And anyway, so there you have it. Some leggings, very simple, very comfortable, and I hope you'll give it a try and that you'll like it as much as I do. All right, thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.